All right, class, today's lesson is on stress. Stress is interesting in the sense where it's an emotion as well as a motivator to get things done. So today we're going to look at how we can approach stress, explain it, investigate it. Maybe this will help you understand some of the information that's floating around the coronavirus and how people are feeling and responding to all of this uncertainty. So today, as I'm doing this lecture, if you can just fill in the stress worksheet, get those notes done, and then apply some of this understanding to the free response question that's been assigned to you. All right, stress research is mostly done by health psychologists. They want to look at how your emotional state would be putting you at greater risk for developing a physical disease. So for example, in our clinical psychology unit, looking at depression, we know that people that are depressed, they actually have a higher risk of developing common sicknesses like the cold or things like that. And so a health psychologist looks at the environment's impact on a person's emotional state and physical state and how these things all kind of make us more susceptible to basic diseases. If we can understand how our environment triggers our physical responses, our emotional responses, well, maybe we can make the environments better to help lower these cases of physical illnesses or emotional illnesses. So first, let's take a look at how your body adapts and responds to stress. Right, Hans Seeley, he's done the most research within stress, and so his general adaptation syndrome is one that's still heavily used by health psychologists. What this believes is that your body naturally responds to stressors in the environment the exact same way no matter what. All right, so this could be a real stressor like hearing a burglar alarm going off and knowing that someone's breaking into your home, or this could be an imagined stressor where when you're staying at home late at night by yourself, you sometimes think someone's breaking into your home. And so your bodies respond to these normal stressors with coming up with a response system to help you easily fight off these stressors and help you respond to the environment safely and helpfully. And so this general adaptation syndrome breaks down into 3 different stages. You have the alarm stage, the resistance stage, and then the exhaustion stage. And depending on what level, what stage of stress you're at, it'll indicate what's going on within your body. All right, so the first stage, that's the alarm stage. This is where your sympathetic nervous system kicks in. So, for example, your heart starts to race a lot, more blood gets sent out to your skeletal muscles. So, if you need to fight something, punch it in the face, or run away, your muscles are ready to take action. All right, so this is the instantaneous burst of adrenaline, burst of cortisol that's going to be released into your system so your body can prepare itself to fight off all of those stressors. As you're fighting off these stressors for a little bit longer periods of time, you now go into the resistance stage. All right, the resistance stage, this is where your blood pressure's been high for a while, you've got all of your stress hormones within your system that's been pumping out consistently, and now you're starting to kind of live through those stressful moments. There might be people that are in the resistance stage of stress right now as we've been stressed for a long time and you're dealing with all those pressures, trying to get through everything. My students that do theater, when you guys are in the middle of tech week and it kind of sucks, you guys are just subsisting on resistance stage. Right? With resistance stage, you're just trying to fight through and get to the next day. And so you're resisting these stressors, trying to overcome these stressors, but it's putting a lot of pressure on your body. All this high blood rate, high blood pressure that's going on. That can do wear and tear to your internal system, specifically your heart and your muscles. Right? These stress hormones, your adrenaline, the cortisol, as they're depleted, your body can't respond to these stressors better, and so those hormones aren't there to help your muscles work properly, your body organs function properly. And so because of this, you might be under stress for an extended period of time and then enter into the exhaustion phase. All right, at this point, you've put such stress on your body physically, where your heart has been pumping over and over and over again. You have no more stress hormones to supply. You've got your sympathetic nervous system's been in high reactivity for a long time, that now your body is just physically exhausted. And so because of that, you are more vulnerable to picking up basic illnesses. Your body can't fight off simple infections like a common cold or a simple infection, things like that. And so because of that, people actually get physically exhausted and sick because of stress within their environment. You hear a lot of famous athletes, famous musicians that have been hospitalized due to exhaustion. Well, that's phase 3. That's what they've been doing. Their body is just so depleted, dehydrated, exhausted that you need to take time to rest and escape those stressors in your environment. And so if you have those moments built in your life that makes it easier for you to take moments to step away from stressors, then hopefully you never get to that phase 3. Maybe you can resolve the stress in phase 1, you can fight your way through it within phase 2, but if you make it to phase 3, that's where most of the problems and the issues come in. Right? We do know that there are 2 types of personalities that tend to be more susceptible to stress versus less susceptible. So this is built off of Friedman and Rosamond's work, where they said that there are 2 personality types. Type A are the aggressive personality types, where type B, those are our blasé personality types. They looked at healthy men between the ages of 35 and 59. So there are some issues there already where it's very age discriminatory and gender discriminatory. But it's a good starting point for just figuring out how do people respond to stress. Our type A people tend to be very competitive. They're high driven, they get to be very impatient, they're more likely to be aggressive. And so when they get stressed, their response is just to get very angry. Right? They are quick to rage, to yell, to scream, to fight out against that thing that's stressing them out. They also are easy to become stressed because they are so competitive. They're more susceptible to that frustration-aggression principle. They're frustrated and then they're angry. Our type B individuals, they tend to be more easygoing, more relaxed. They don't get stressed out. They aren't as highly motivated as maybe our type A's, but they don't have the same stress levels as maybe our type A's do, and so they have lower health risks because of their stress response. A good type A example would be for people who are a fan of Parks and Recreation, right? Leslie Knope is a really good type A. I would say, what's his face? Chris Pratt's character within that show, he's more of a type B. Andy, that's the name. And so he's very easygoing. He doesn't get stressed all that often. All right, what we know with these 2 personality types is that our type A individuals, they suffer from more physical stress problems because they are so often to become stressed. Our type A individuals are more likely to smoke, they sleep fewer hours, they drink more caffeine. If I was going to give them the temperament test I gave you guys back in quarter 1, they would have very high emotionality scores, very high anger scores. And they tend to be pretty abrasive. If you were going to describe characteristics of a type A, they would be more likely to be described as blunt, where a type B would be more likely to be described as like easygoing. Right? Because our type Bs don't become stressed and our type As do, they do tend to have more physical problems. Their blood pressure, their pulse rates tend to be a lot higher because they almost are constantly in that alarm stage where they feel like they're under threat or they're being challenged and they need to fight something off. All right, so if we're going to compare the physical problems from type A to type B, who are we going to describe as being more hostile or cynical? Well, those individuals that are described as hostile and cynical, or type A's, are 5 times more likely to die by middle-aged, which is defined by 45 years, compared to our type B, who are described as gentle and trusting type people. If we give them a temperament test and they score high in the anger area, well, they're 3 times more likely to maybe have a heart attack. They're hot-tempered, they're 5 times more likely to have a heart attack. And our pessimistic individuals, people who see the darker side of life, they don't see the benefits. Well, they're twice as likely to have some heart disease complications compared to our optimistic. Right? This isn't saying that people that are optimistic, people that are easygoing, people that aren't high in anger have a better quality of life, that are happier. It's just saying that the physical problems tend to be lower amongst our type B personalities compared to our type A personalities. right? Newer research is stating that we might actually have a third stress personality. Type D, these are our depressed responses. And I know someone might be thinking, what happened to type C? But remember, it's not a lettering system where it's going alphabetical. It's lettering in the sense of what is their stress response. Type A responds with anger. Type B, they're blasé, they don't get any stress. Our type D, they respond to stress with depression. They tend to be very anxious and worry prone. They have high social inhibitions where they don't feel comfortable. And so when these types of people become stressed or angry, become stressed, they don't respond with anger and fighting out. They respond with depression and reverting back into themselves. Right? They have the same rates of heart disease as our type A individuals, but they aren't described as maybe as blunt or aggressive. And so research is stating that these individuals, on scoring on tests, they might come across outwardly as a type B personality, but inwardly their body is reacting like a type A individual. And so they actually are coming across as highly stressed internally, but externally they might be coming across as more of a blasé or a very sad, upset individual. We find that more men are likely to be more likely to be categorized as type A, where maybe more of our women are more likely to be categorized as type D personalities. And so there are some differences when we add in the different genders and how they respond to it. And so these correlations still line up between our physical and our psychological, emotional responses. We just need to refine how we're testing them by looking at the internal as well as the external displays of emotions. All right, if we want to know how stressed you are, there are three characteristics that are highly correlated with an individual being stressed. Right? One is how much control do you see over your life? If you remember back earlier in the year, we talked about learned helplessness. Right? If you learn that you don't have control over the environment, those individuals end up with depression. They give up. Individuals with an internal locus of control, they tend to respond to stress better than those with an external locus of control. So remember, an external is you believe control is outside of yourself, it's fate, it's luck, it's the government or parents or whatever. Where an internal locus of control, it's you, it's your responsibility, and your actions have a direct impact on the outcome. So there was a study done with a nursing home where people on the first floor, everything was decided for them. When they got up, where they eat their meals, what activities they're going to do each day, watering the plants, making the beds. Everybody on that floor, it was all taken care of. But people on the second floor, they made choices. Right? Do you want to have breakfast in your room or in the dining hall? You're responsible for making your beds and watering the plants. You can choose what activity you do in the afternoon. Right? And then they just looked at how often do these people die? Right, we're not murdering these people. It's ethical because we're just tracking these rates of the different floors and how much control they were given over their life, and then how did that maybe impact life expectancy. And what we found is that those that lived on the first floor, where they did not have control, well, most people on that floor tend to die sooner than those that were living on the second floor who had some control and some choices. And so we do find that individuals in jobs or people in life where they feel like they have some control over the outcome, they have some choice involved within the matter, they tend to have lower levels of stress and therefore are less likely to end up within those exhaustion phase or less likely to manifest those physical diseases like we find with our highly stressed people. Right? We know poverty and inequality also might play a role. Individuals who live in areas where there's high inequality, they also have higher levels of stress. This is true both for those that are on the lower end of the social spectrum as well as those in the higher levels of the social spectrum. Right? So we find that individuals with high rates of inequality, high rates of poverty, there's also a lot of violent deaths. There's higher feelings of frustration and worthlessness, so more clinical disorders diagnosed. There's poor public health, poor education within those systems, And so what we find is that being in these poverty environments, being in these unequal environments, it impacts everyone's stress levels, where they tend to have higher rates of stress compared to areas where there's more equality present. So there's the theory that like money can't buy happiness. That's true up to a point. You do need some money to be happy, but having $1 million over $5 million, those people aren't any happier. It's really just having those basic thresholds met. And if you're living in an environment where those basic thresholds aren't met, then those people are likely to have high stress levels and suffer some of the physical symptoms linked with that. All right, we also know pessimism is a big predictor of stress. Highly pessimistic people are more likely to believe control is outside of their hands. They're more likely to see the worst case scenarios happening and they don't have control over stopping it. And so we find that our pessimistic individuals are highly stressed compared to our optimists. People that expect the best but prepare for the worst, they have the best physical and mental health. And so being an optimist and just blindly going through life isn't beneficial, but it does help in the sense where it lowers your stress level. But those that are aware of the worst case outcomes, where they can start preparing for that, but still expect the best case scenario where they can still control over what's going to happen, that tends to be helpful for them. So they did a test with elderly patients in a nursing home, and they asked, did they have faith in the future? What was life going to do for them? And those that were highly optimistic about what their life was going to be like in 5 years were also much more likely to still be living when those researchers came back 5 years later. But our pessimists expected the worst that was going to happen. They didn't see hope in the future. Well, those individuals weren't alive when the researchers returned. So there is a lot of impact on your physical health depending on your stress levels. All right, so your goal for today is go through, make sure you finish your stress worksheet. Again, I'll be online at Zoom at 1 o'clock for anyone who would like to meet, or you can email me and I'll get back to those emails as soon as I see them. All right, have a good day.